I think that psychoanalysis is not so much a scientific theory as it is a philosophy. And as a philosophy, I think it's pretty good. The problem is that psychology itself is largely theoretic. It has not developed a methodology by which we can derive models on how the mind works. And this means that there is a big gap between clinical psychology and theoretical psychology, or research scientific psychology. The psychology that is being done in the lab largely doesn't apply to anything that people do when they give therapy. And the models that you have to be using as a scientist, and it's not only true for psychology, but sadly also for other disciplines, are different from the things that you can really publish about. Because our science is set up in such a way that you can publish the things that you can prove, or that you can prove within the constraints of a given methodology, which doesn't mean that it's a mathematical proof, but it's basically something that you can sell as sound science. But the interesting questions are not being answered in the domain of what you can prove, but in the domain of what's possible, right? If something is complicated, you can very often not prove your understanding, but you are operating with a system of so many interdependencies that give you a consistent model, but you cannot necessarily track all the connections in this model and find evidence for their existence. The reason why the psychoanalyst believes many of the components of the theory is not because he has an experiment or knows of an experiment that has ever validated them, but because the interdependence of these features makes it possible to reconstruct symmetries to explain why something is the case. And this allows you to get a handle of the system that you're operating with. And the difficulty is for me if people take Freud and take him, for instance, as gospel, that they think that Freud had access to revelations that are not accessible to the mortal scientist or the mortal psychologist. That is probably not correct. So I think it's a good idea to read all these theories as stepping stones to build your own understanding of the system that you're looking at. And in the absence of a better theory, use the body of theories that is available to you to interpret the mind of a person that is sitting in front of you, and how to interact with it, right? So don't take these models as ultimate depiction of reality, and check whether they're useful. And I think that Freud has created some very useful theories. It's just as soon as you are taking these theories as something that has to be true because Freud said them, you are setting yourself up for possible failures.